peeps, welcome to the Alex Gem Experience, the ACE podcast. Let's dive in. Right, today's episode is serious. As always serious, always highly informative. Hopefully I inspire, teach you guys some interesting things every now and then. And today's podcast should be no different. We're looking at depression, how to avoid depression. Very serious issue. So we're going to firstly identify, what depression is really. Then we're going to look into the possible causes of depression, what induces depression. And lastly, we're going to look at how to avoid depression, or at least alleviate many of the symptoms associated with depression. So here we go. What is depression? Well, this is just my definition. There are all kinds of definitions out there. But my one is a feeling of hopelessness. Okay? When someone becomes despondent. When you experience sadness so often on a daily basis that it becomes what I call your emotional home. I write about this extensively in my book, The Art of Power, Happiness and Success. So please dive into that. You'll love the information, some of the knowledge I drop, really exceptional stuff, backed by science, trial and error, what I've learned over the years and so on and so forth. So go check it out. And really it's about when you experience something so often, right, you begin to associate these feelings, these emotions, these actions, these impulses even, with who you are. You associate it with your identity, okay? And then it becomes an automatic program. It becomes an automatic response, something you don't have to think about when your body has learned to do it so often than not. So we all know what a depressed person looks like. I mean, if you were to draw like how a depressed person would be, how their body language would be used, their posture, their gestures, these sorts of things, I'm pretty sure it's quite universal. You know, a lot of people would say, they've got their hands on their head, they're kneeling over, they've got closed body language, they may be crossing their arms, they're not taking up much space, not making eye contact, maybe even eyes closed, these sort of things. These are just some of the physical symptoms, if you will, of someone who is in a depressed state. So depression is a feeling of hopelessness, and once you experience, so I like to call it a small river, if you will, or rivers. I call it rivers of sadness that leads to an ocean of despair or depression in this instance. And that's what sadness is. Sadness experienced on a daily basis will result in what we know as depression. Okay, so when you experience an emotion so often that it becomes ingrained and we begin to associate it with who you are. And then you start to label yourself in depressing ways, such as I am not in control of my life, or I am confused, or I am lost, or I am depressed. And you start to say I ams. And whenever you use the terms I am, you are essentially commanding yourself into a destiny. You're projecting that this is the way your life is right now, and this is the way it's going to continue to be. Obviously, unless you start to integrate some changes into your neural networks and the feedback loops between your thoughts, your emotions, your actions, your momentum, your results, these sort of things. And I'll look into that in a bit more detail later on. So now that we've uncovered essentially what depression is, what it means, let's start to look at possible causes of depression. So a lack of learning. So really, whenever we learn something, guys, learning essentially creates neural networks within your brain. You create new neurons, brand new neurons within your hippocampus, within your brain, right? And when you create new neurons, this enables you to create new associations, new connections, synaptical connections between these neurons, which essentially means you have new thoughts. We want this, we need this, because 60 to 70,000 thoughts we have per day, each person. And 90% of these tend to be the same as the previous day because we seem to lead monotonous lives. We do the same sort of things, we experience the same kind of physical environments, see the same sort of people, interact with the same types of people, use the same sort of apps on our phones in the same sort of ways, the usual certain amount of minutes or hours every day. We watch TV and the same sort of shows or episodes on the same sort of channels, on the same TV, in the same sort of ways, usually the same sort of times. Do you know what I mean? We go to sleep the same sort of ways. Now, that's a program that I actually think is quite beneficial, sleeping, to establish a good sleeping routine. But generally speaking, we drive our cars to certain locations on a regular basis. we think of certain things, we trigger certain emotional impulses and experiences in the past that keep us grounded. I'll come back to that later on. And when we do this, we experience sameness. So like, will your brain change if you do the same sort of things every single day? The answer is obviously no. We will not. So a lack of learning will result in depression. So an antonym to depression, if you will, is learning. When you learn, you feel happier. You feel like you're progressing. It stimulates something called BDNF, brain-derived nootropic factor, which stimulates neurogenesis. It makes you feel better, makes you feel like you're in charge of your life, makes you feel like you're progressing and improving in ways. I'll look at that later on in greater detail. But a lack of learning leads to a lack of challenge in the brain. And one of the things we teach the elderly is to keep your brain working, keep challenging your brain, all sorts of games that you can play, like board games and card games and these sorts of things, and quizzes and things like this, to keep challenging the brain, keep thinking, keep learning, keep consolidating existing neural patterns and stimulate newer ones. And you can do this at an elderly age as well to prevent the onset of all kinds of age-related illnesses. Yeah, I think prevent things like dementia from taking hold and so on and so forth. So a lack of learning over time can lead to or be symptomatic of depression. So reading is magnificent because not only do you learn more, but you are likely to have stimulate neuroplasticity. And I'll look at this again in later detail. Neuroplasticity is what enables the brain to restructure, rewire itself. Yes, that's correct. It creates new patterns amongst your brain cells, producing new chemicals. Every time you have a thought, you automatically present and create a new chemical. So if you have a positive thought, your brain will produce a positive chemical. And consequently, this is how it unfolds, and vice versa. If you have a negative thought, you also will produce a negative chemical. That's more likely to trigger another negative thought, and therefore another negative chemical, another negative emotion, if you will. And this is how our brains work. Every single human being falls into this. It's not like geniuses and really wealthy, prosperous, happy people don't operate this way. This is universal. This is the way we operate biologically. Genetically as well. But we can change this. A third of our memory is down to our genetics, our biology, something we can't control. But fortunately or unfortunately for some of us, 2/3 of our memory is really down to, it's within our control. It's down to what we learn, what we make of our memory, how we challenge ourselves, what we learn, what we do on a regular basis, our routines, our habitual programs. So a lack of learning will support, let's say it supports the onslaught, the pervasion of depression. Let's continue. So boredom. Listen, what happens when you're bored? Like, honestly, think about it. What do you tend to do when you are bored? 9 times out of 10, I bet it's not something you're proud of, right? Boredom leads to people getting involved in addictions. It leads to people getting involved in obsessive behaviors that, reduce and dampen the quality of our lives. When we're bored, we're more negative. When we're more negative, we tend to want to either fuel our negativity or because we're masochistic and so on and so forth, or we tend to try and change our state through impulsive behaviors that kind of stimulate the brain, whether like having illicit or even licit drugs like excessive alcohol, drugs, smoking, all sorts of things, and so on and so forth. So boredom can result in you like contacting people you will later regret contacting, like getting in touch with people who will respond to you, and these people more likely than not tend to be people who don't live the most amazing, challenging, busy, exciting lives, in which case you could get involved in things that you wouldn't really want to get involved in. So boredom is a precursor for negativity, in my eyes at least. So pay attention to how often you're bored. Pay attention to what times in the day you're bored. Start to identify what sort of practices you get involved in when you're bored, what kind of thoughts you have, what kind of feelings you experience, what kind of actions you do when you're bored. What kind of addictions do you fuel? Do you tend to gamble when you're bored? Do you tend to, start conflict and drama? Do you tend to watch too much TV? Do you tend to excessively masturbate or be preoccupied with sex? What are your addictions? What are your obsessions? Because they tend to stem and build over time due to boredom. Do you tend to do things you later regret out of boredom? Some people get hooked into gangs and a gang culture because they're bored, because they lack direction, because they don't have a productive, exciting, captivating lifestyle. They don't experience flow on a regular basis, and so they look for external stimuli, oftentimes in the worst possible ways. So boredom leads to negativity, which over time will result in a poor self-esteem. Because boredom is the result of a lack of discipline. When you are disciplined, when you do the things you know you need to do, like exercise, meditate, work on things that are important, make those important phone calls, do those important meetings, be creative, read things, watch inspiring material online, get in contact or forge new relationships with people who are, really supportive, successful, happy people. When you don't do disciplines that you know are really important, eating well, cooking the right types of foods to keep you on track, supplementation. When you don't do these brilliant routines, we start to lose respect for ourselves. When you lose respect for yourself, you tend to be more self-deprecating. You tend to belittle and disparage yourself, whether knowingly or unknowingly. And you tend to partake in negative behaviours that really inhibit any self-love that you might have had. So boredom leads to negativity, which results in fueling self-hatred, self-loathing, if you will. And that can express itself in many different ways. So we want to avoid boredom at all costs. Start coming up with a successful, expressive life, guys. What are your interests? How can you maximize this interest? Whom do you love? Whom could you support? What do you do for a living? What accreditations, what kind of certificates, what kind of studying or courses or groups or workshops could you partake in? Could you research to better your life? What do you enjoy doing? How could you maximize these opportunities? What support mechanisms do you need in place? Do you need a mentor? Do you need someone who's been there, done that? I could be that mentor for you. I've had many mentors over the years. Andy Harrington, JT Fox, to name a few, and I'm hopeful to have many more amazing mentors in the future because they accelerate your progress. They keep you focused. They hold you accountable. If you can't afford a mentor, then at least choose someone who has unconditional love for you, like a friend or a familial member or a sibling or a relative of some sort, and have them hold you accountable. Have formal meetings with them. Fortnightly, bi-weekly or once a month. Check in with them and help them with something that they want to stay focused on. Build your network, guys. This is what success is all about. So take it seriously, and this leads me nicely on to another cause of depression. That's when people don't have a purpose in their lives. Everyone wants to feel significant. I don't care what age you are. Even people who are elderly, in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 100s. They all need a purpose. If you don't have a purpose, you will die. You will actually die physically. And before you die physically, you will die internally, spiritually, mentally. Because when we don't feel like we have a purpose, and our purpose could be anything. It could be for philanthropic reasons, for charitable reasons. Your purpose could be to support your children, your spouse. Your purpose could be to support your grandchildren. Your purpose could be to support your parents who might be struggling in different ways. Your purpose could be teaching people things, becoming a teacher. Could be working, being a policeman or woman, being a firefighter. I don't know what your purpose might be, but have one, for crying out loud. So bear this in mind, guys. Everyone needs a purpose in their lives. And when you feel like you don't have a purpose, that's when you lose meaning in your life. When you don't feel like you have meaning, you become sad, you become depressed, you feel sorry for yourself. You don't know what to do with your time, your energy. Your focus shifts to negative patterns. Okay? And our focus is all that we have in our lives. And then we have trauma. Trauma fuels negativity. Trauma is really an emotional experience that still holds us deeply. It's something that we are deeply rooted to. You could be an ex-soldier, an ex-marine. You could be someone who's suffered abuse in their childhood or during their adolescence or even now as an adult. You could have been abused. You could have been neglected. You could be physically abused. You could be emotionally abused. Verbally abused. You could be bullied in a whole host of different ways. You could be held captive over years in a relationship, and that could be a form of abuse. So trauma, emotional turmoil, abuse, these are all ways that make us feel depressed, that teach us to be depressed. Because we aren't depression, we do things that depressed people do. For example, you guys are intelligent. I'm not going to patronize you now. So if I asked you, what do depressing people or depressed people do? What do they partake in on a daily basis? You might say things like, they don't do much. They stay indoors a lot. They're negative people. They're quite pessimistic. They're always worried or concerned about things. Depressed people feel like they don't have a future. They don't have meaning in their lives. They don't exercise. They don't read. They don't learn. They don't believe they have a future. They aren't inspired. They're negative and these sort of things. And we remind ourselves every day that we're depressed. This is why some people find it hard to get over addictions. Because every single day they've taught themselves to experience things so often and so well that their body has learned to do it better than their mind. It's habitual. And 95% of your perceptions, your beliefs, your emotions, your thoughts are subconscious programs, meaning you've taught yourself to do it better and you find it difficult to do. That's what an addiction is. That's what a habit is. You don't need to think about it. You just do it. And sometimes you feel like you can't control it. That's what an addiction is. And unfortunately, many people might disagree with it, but it's the truth. We've taught ourselves to be addicted to these harmful, deleterious emotions, such as experiencing trauma. A lot of people wake up every single day and they become reactive and they find themselves thinking about how they were once abused, raped, or harmed or neglected, or they think about how they were rejected or turned down, or even milder forms like how they were fired in a job that meant a lot to them, or they were divorced, or their kids said they hate them, or something like this that has really deeply branded them emotionally in such a way that they feel unable to change their lives because they're so disturbed by their own past. It's really sad. And it happens. And a lot of people don't know how to overcome it, but I will shortly be teaching you many different mechanisms you can incorporate and instill on a daily basis to start to move past these traumatizing events. So, a poor lifestyle. I wouldn't say that this is one of the main reasons, but it does play a role. It genuinely plays a role, like having a poor quality lifestyle, like a poor eating program. Excessively eating, overeating, and eating the wrong types of foods. Eating highly refined, highly processed foods that are harmful to us, that our body, really struggles to break down. Having too many sugars on a daily basis, having too many carbs on a daily basis makes us feel lethargic. Whenever you feel lethargic, now I don't know anyone out there who eats a massive plate of pasta, pastries, carbs, cookies, cakes, and then afterwards will fancy going for a run, fancy reading or learning soon after. It doesn't happen. What happens when you eat like garbage? You just want to sit down. When you just want to sit down, you're inactive. When you're inactive, you tend to be more bored. When you're more bored, you tend to be more negative. When you're more negative, you tend to feel sad. And over time, this leads to depression. This is how your eating program might be preventing you from improving the quality of your life. So start eating foods that fuel you, that give you energy. Start consuming things like wheatgrass and start having things like green tea, because it has a powerful antioxidant called EGCG. Brilliant antioxidant that preserves and supports your memory, makes you feel lighthearted, increases your metabolism. Start eating like seeds and berries and dark leafy greens, salads, vegetables, broccoli, asparagus, celery. Start having, tomatoes, great for your brain, such as mushrooms as well. Start eating things like, if your diet supports this, start having things like fish for the DHA. Start consuming supplements like krill, omega-3s, amazing for your brain function. It's exactly what your brain thrives on, DHA, these omega-3 fatty acids. Because your brain doesn't and your body doesn't naturally produce DHA. So get it externally. Eat seafood, eat oysters, eat wild-caught salmon. Really start to pay attention to your eating program. Things like sweet potatoes, highly nutritious. Start having things that really support your energy levels. Wheatgrass, like I said, green tea, especially like maca green tea, is the best form of green tea. Keep hydrated, drink copious amounts of water. Have things like lemons. Lemons are fantastic for you. Not just for the vitamin C, but it's fantastic for fat loss as well. So many different things. I'm sure many as well. So really start paying attention to your diet. Stay away from cookies, pastries, breads, cereals, sugary foods, because over time, they actually harm and kill your brain cells. They genuinely do. When you harm and kill your brain cells, you're less likely to want to do things to change your state. You're more likely to be impulsive, and that's therefore lose respect for yourself over time. And start partaking in more addictive behaviors like gambling, conflict, leading to poor sleep. When you don't sleep well, you tend to hallucinate, have emotional disorders, suffer from insomnia. This ruins and imbalances your neurotransmitters. I'll talk to you about that in a bit. Come on, guys. All these things are connected. They're interconnected. So start putting them together. Start creating the lifestyle you want to live and take hold of your life. You have a choice. Can you think? Is your heart beating? Are you breathing now? If that's the case, you can change your life. Just needs a bit of discipline. Just needs momentum. Get the right kind of people around you. Do the exact opposite to what you've been doing if you're depressed. I'm on fire. There's no doubt about it. Right, let's carry on. A lack of progress. A lack of progress definitely makes you feel like you're losing momentum in your life. You've got people who have traveled to the moon and back. You've got astronauts who have done some amazing feats in their lives. And shortly after, many, many astronauts, tend to be severely depressed after experiencing such amazing, exhilarating highs. Why? Because they've lost momentum. Nothing can beat it. Just like ex-athletes who don't have a vision for themselves after. When their careers are over, they've experienced such great highs, high amounts of competition, feeling significant, making a lot of money, these sort of things. And, being adored, receiving such, adulation, being revered. And then over time, out of nowhere, they're insignificant now. They're not in the limelight. No one's talking about them anymore. They feel like their prime is over. When you feel like you aren't making progress in your life, you will soon become depressed. Make no mistake about it. Look at the brilliant boxer Tyson Fury, who says, I love boxing. If I weren't boxing or if I didn't have something to captivate me, I would be depressed. I'd be looking to commit suicide. He's spoken openly about it. He's just an example of many, many highly successful people who know how their brains work, who know themselves so well, they have such emotional intelligence about their own lives, how they operate, that they know how to, put one over themselves, stay one step ahead of themselves. So look to constantly progress in your life in order to, stay on track, to remain focused. I spoke earlier about people who, do things that ruin their brain cells, harm and kill their brain cells. Poor sleep is one of them, and also high stress. So high stress, most people spend over 70% of their entire lives, guys, living in chronic stress. This is completely unnatural and inappropriate. It means they've taught themselves to be so stressed out, whether anxious or fearful or angry or whatever it might be. They've taught themselves to experience this so often that they can't switch it off. And they begin to become fearful, and they begin to process information in harmful ways. Because if you're really fearful, in another term, another euphemism for fear is, anxiety and stress. If you're really stressful on a regular basis because of your work or your finances or your relationships, then what happens is there will be an imbalance in your neurotransmitters. So you might have excessive amounts of things like excessive use of dopamine, excessive norepinephrine and epinephrine, which is related to your sympathetic nervous system. These are excitatory neurotransmitters that make, and if these are in excess, well, basically what these are, especially like adrenaline and noradrenaline, like they're meant to help you make smart choices to keep you alive, to keep you safe. And they can oftentimes make accurate decisions about what's stressful, what's a dangerous situation. But if your neurotransmitters aren't firing appropriately because you're experiencing too much stress, they will become excessive and disproportionate. And it can lead to like emotional disorders. It could lead to compromised sleep. It can lead to irritability, impulsive behaviors, addictions, ruining your immunity, ruining your digestion. Mental disorders can stem from it, high stress. This can ruin your eating program, ruin your self-esteem, lead to things like self-harm over time, ADHD, all different forms of abuse. So high stress can, not just high stress, but accidents, injuries, these sort of things lead to imbalances in your neurotransmitters. Like you won't feel, it can ruin things like inhibitory neurotransmitters like serotonin or GABA. If these aren't working effectively, you will have poor quality sleep. You'll suffer from insomnia. You won't be able to be calm. You'll be restless. You won't be able to focus. Your attention span will be all over the place. And these bad experiences will harm and kill your brain cells. That's right. Stress kills your brain cells. Stress leads to depression. Stress leads to the cultivation and manifestation of awful illnesses and diseases. This is science talking now, not just me. This is science. So stress causes depression. You need to start thinking about what daily things you do, or at least weekly things you can incorporate in your life to reduce stress. Exercise, meditation, journaling, seeking support, professional support and help and advice. And these sorts of things, okay? And lack of fulfilling relationships. Studies now show that happiness, the main reason why people are happy, it's got nothing to do with finances and these sort of things. The main reason why people are happy in their lives is because they have fulfilling and beautiful relationships. There are people they know who have unconditional love for them. They feel like they can confide in people and talk to certain people. They feel trust. They feel loved. They feel supported. They're around people who want to make them laugh and smile and feel good about themselves. These are beautiful, empowering relationships. But if you don't have these support mechanisms, if you don't have these amazing relationships, if you have toxic relationships where people, it's all about feeling like you can get one over on one another. It's all about making people feel like they are unworthy, like they don't deserve love, and these sorts of things. If you find yourself in these toxic relationships, then it can result in depression. Whatever you hear, you will soon become. I don't care how intelligent or insightful you are. Like, you could be an absolute genius. If a genius listened to someone berate them and be so rude and evil and malicious and callous, if they listen to people speak, say they woke up and for 12 hours every single day, they just heard abuse and negative talk, and people saying, whether directly or indirectly saying negative things about them, they will over time start to believe them. Because if someone says something negative to you, will it result in a negative thought? Yes. That will soon result in a negative chemical, a negative feeling, a negative emotion. This can create that feedback loop, like I said earlier, about your thoughts influencing your feelings, influencing your thoughts, influencing your feelings, and so on and so forth. If you listen to this nasty material on a regular basis, it will over time dictate your habits. Your habits over time lead to your personality traits. This will over time form your personality, your identity, just because of the things you listen to, the people with whom you surround yourself with. So start taking this seriously, guys. Okay. So how to avoid depression? Now move on to some of the more positive things. For crying out loud, it's about time. The easiest way to get out of depression is to be more giving. Because when you are giving, not just with your finances, but giving with your time, helping loved ones, helping strangers, doing nice things for people, you teach your brain that things are good. You have abundance. Harsh, nasty, evil people are really people who have a scarcity mindset. They believe they don't have the things that they want in their lives, and they look to take from others in all sorts of ways. They develop the victim mentality. I write about this in my book, in my course. Go get it. Oh my God, change your life now. Go to my website, www.alexgem.com. Click where it says join PHS today. Enter your credit card details. You'll gain instant access to my mind-blowing course, The Power System, taking you from wherever you are now in your life, even if you are depressed now, even if you have great quality, abundant lifestyle now, I can take you to that next level. And I include amazing bonuses, hours of exclusive video footage, podcast material, and 100 audio segments to keep you on track. The whole package is worth $1,200. I'm not charging anywhere near that. I am here to help you. I'm here to serve you. But you're going to have to invest in me and invest in yourself. And you could and should do that immediately. So where were we? Be giving. Practice giving in a multitude of different ways. Every chance you get, give to a charity. Every chance you get, help someone out. Practice leaving. I learned this from the brilliant Jim Rohn. Practice leaving situations better than how you found it. If you're in a meeting, make sure your chair is tucked at the end. If you're dumping someone, if you're in a relationship or you're dating someone and you want to move on, say to them, listen, I really appreciate this and that about you. You're a lovely human being. I'm just in a place where I'm looking for something else. Practice leaving things in good ways. If you're walking by and you see that there's some litter around, pick it up, put it in the bin. That's what happy people do. Losers, people who are upset in their lives, are people who want to damage their external world, and that includes people and their external physical environments. Think about someone who steals. Are they coming from a place of abundance? No, otherwise you wouldn't be stealing. They're like a free radical. They're like a damaged cell within your body that's looking to take from other healthy, strong cells, and therefore damage these healthy cells, damage their DNA by taking an electron, stealing. That's what robbers do. Or people who don't just rob physically, people who try to just make others feel bad about themselves, people who always look to get one over on other people. These are people who just don't know any better. And they're more likely to not be to be unhappy in their own lives. So how else can you avoid depression? Well, I spoke about this briefly earlier, neurogenesis. Practice stimulating what's called brain-derived neurotropic factor. Okay, it enables you to make stronger connections between your neurons. It improves the strength of your synapses. Synapses connect your neurons within your brain. So if you're strengthening these synapses, if you're strengthening the connection between your neurons, this leads to clearer and stronger thoughts. When you think more clearly, you're likely to think better. You're likely to maintain your attention, your focus, and therefore do the right thing, do better things. Yeah? Because you're coming from a source of strength. BDNF, when you activate and stimulate BDNF, it's also more likely to create newer connections amongst your neurons, which gives you more options. It helps you to stimulate neuroplasticity, creating new thoughts. When a thought is just tons of neurons, they fire, they just organize themselves into certain networks. They fire, they wire, they connect themselves, and they produce a chemical, like I said, an emotion. Okay, that's just, in its simplicity, that's what a thought is. And you can create new thoughts by stimulating BDNF. And I'll talk about this in many different ways and in different videos. But you can stimulate BDNF in many ways. I'm just going to give you a few now. Daylight exposure, cold and heat exposure. So having alternating hot and cold showers, learning, reading things, novelty, newness, going for walks in the parks, be on the beach, experiencing new things. You can stimulate BDNF by having glutamate in natural forms, like think of your traditional omelette. Those kind of foods support brain function, cognitive function. Have a niacin supplement, exercise, especially HIIT training, really explosive movements. Reduce how many calories you have on a daily basis. Practice intermittent fasting. These are all ways of stimulating BDNF. And therefore giving yourself more options. When you're learning, when you feel happy, when you feel like you're improving and you're learning new things, it's a brilliant antidepressant. BDNF is an antidepressant. It's a natural antidepressant that many medical businesses do not want to teach you what to do, because otherwise you would not be at full victim and become dependent on them to buy things off them, essentially. But we'll leave that at that. So look to stimulate BDNF at every opportunity you have, every single day. Pay attention to your routines. What could stimulate BDNF? Sleeping well stimulates BDNF. Sleeping well improves your performance, improves your productivity, over time improving your self-esteem. When you sleep well, you tend to be more creative. Sleeping well massively improves your memory, your learning skills, which makes you believe in your potential to learn, to grow, to challenge yourself, to experience abundance. So sleep is one of the best things you can do to avoid depression, but avoid oversleeping, because it can be counterintuitive. When you tend to sleep for longer than 9 hours, that tends to not be helpful. So seek to hit that sweet spot. I personally think it's between 8 to 8.5 hours. That's the sweet spot for a great night's sleep, to be more effective, more efficient, to reduce how much you eat, to make better choices for yourself, to develop your self-esteem. I personally think sleep is very much linked to self-esteem. The less sleep you have, the worse your self-esteem becomes over time, because you don't function well when you're not sleeping well. What else? Practice being grateful. Okay, practice being grateful Write down and think about the things that you appreciate in your life. Do you have great relationships? Do you have certain skills? Are you intelligent? Do you have a love of learning, which is incredible? Are you quite wealthy? Do you make more money than the average person? Yeah? Or I forget the statistics, but, most people in the world, a high proportion of people in the world, thrive on just a couple of dollars every single day. If you make more than a couple of dollars every single day, then you are very fortunate financially. This is something to really appreciate, guys. Can you read? Are you breathing? Do you know the sort of quality of things your body and your brain are doing for you without you even knowing? Like your heart pumps over 2 gallons of blood every single minute. Now, every single cell in your body, you have 100 billion cells in your brain. Do you know that every single cell in your body goes through 100,000 different chemical reactions every second? Are you doing that? No. No, you're not. You are alive. We need to be grateful every single day that we wake up. Grateful to have the opportunity to see, to learn, to experience new things if that's what you choose to do. We need to appreciate what we have. I appreciate technology. I appreciate the fact that I'm able to communicate with you right now. What a blessing that is for me. What opportunities that provides me. What opportunities it provides you to learn from me. What a blessing. So really start to think about the things that you are grateful for in your life. Are you grateful for your children? Are you grateful for your parents? Are you grateful for your job? Are you grateful for, being able to drive? Are you, what certain skills do you have that you're grateful for, that you take for granted? Because this is called the law of familiarity. People take things for granted. They don't appreciate over time. They lose perspective of what's important in their lives. But we can change that. Meditation, writing down what we're grateful for. Keeping on track, not letting our egos go out of control, staying grounded, living in the present moment, putting our egos aside. These sort of things. So you can, I alluded to this earlier, in the sense of the importance of overcoming your past. So earlier I spoke about trauma, painful memories that brand you, that keep you stuck in the past, that suppress your best self from growing, from developing. But we need to overcome our past, especially if our memories of the past tend to be negative or harmful. And we can change that, but we need to utilize our imagination. We need to be able to imagine success so that we can convince and coax ourselves into believing that we can change. Because when you start to visualize things vividly, in clear detail, make it bright, immerse yourself, put yourself in the experience, see it through your eyes. When you start to visualize things on a daily basis, like before you sleep, as soon as you wake up, whenever you're daydreaming, start imagining the kind of life you want to create, the kind of life you deserve. And start taking action towards it. Start to believe yourself. Start to believe that you're already there. And then you'll start to attract it in abundance. This is what momentum is, guys. And you are in charge. There's, luck, in my definition, luck is when you do the right things at the right time with the right intentions. And that creates fortune. It creates opportunities. And then we need to take actions to capitalize on our opportunities, right? So start to write down the kind of lifestyle you want to live. What you want to achieve. And start to practice visualizing these things. Start to visualizing the skills you want to develop. Visualize the relationships you want. Visualize the kind of wealth that you want. Because wealthy people have created wealthy patterns in their brains. Your thoughts affecting your emotions, affecting your behaviors. Wealthy people have wealthy thoughts. They produce wealthy chemicals, which leads to wealthy actions and behaviors over time. That's why like a billionaire, for example, could lose all their money, and then within a short period of time, they can make it all back again because they've got the right kind of neural chemistry, the kind of neural networks within their brain. They're programmed for success. And the same thing for health. You can be programmed for health. You can be programmed for abundance. You can program yourself to have high energy. And unfortunately, we can program ourselves to be depressed. We can have depressing thoughts, leading to depressing chemicals, leading to depressing actions like inertia, inactivity, and so on and so forth. So start paying attention to the kind of habits that you have right now, what kind of past you have experienced. And you need to move past that past and start to live in the now. Start to envision what you want, what you deserve. And so that moves me on to our next point. Stay active. People who are depressed don't move much. They want to stay indoors. They wear the same kind of clothes over and over again. They want to stay in bed all the time. They just want to sleep. They don't want to get out and about. They don't want to learn. They don't want to grow. They don't want to challenge themselves. They want to stay in their comfort zone. They want to feel sorry for themselves. In many ways, depressed people are extremely selfish. And they have a victim mentality. They feel like they can't improve their lives. Of course you can improve your life. But it's a choice. And it's just a rut. It can be a phase for some people. But it's all about change. And change starts now. What are you doing now? Not right now, but what do you do on a daily basis? So if you want to avoid depression, go for a run. If you want to avoid depression, join some gym classes. If you want to avoid negative feelings, go and lift some weights. Get a personal trainer. Go exercise with your friends. Go for walks with your family or with your friends or with your colleagues. Keep active. Because where there's motion, there is emotion. And depression is a low vibrational state. Lethargy. Inactivity. So if you don't want to be depressed, move. It's as simple as that. Learn. Grow. And that moves me on to our next point, the love of learning. If you're constantly learning, you're constantly challenging yourself. You're constantly stepping in that state of flow. Because the more intelligent you become, the more able, the more competent you become. The more adept you become, the more you want to challenge yourself. You raise the barrier, you raise your standards. You want to compete with yourself or with others more. When you have that drive, that excitement, you can't be depressed. So if you don't want to be depressed, experience flow more often. Flow, when you experience flow, you lose track of time. You feel so immersed in an activity. It could be reading, could be listening to music, could be running, it could be competing, could be doing sport, it could be doing a hobby, it could be painting. When you experience flow, it's a very joyous and challenging and exciting state. And that's one way to combat depression. And another thing I learned is the importance of having another goal ready when you achieve something. So say you have a goal and you know you're coming very close to achieving it. Plan for the next goal in advance. Because sadness or depressing state usually happens in between goals. So the longer you leave it between when you achieve something, whether you got a job promotion, or whether you got married, or whether you made a great investment, or whether you started and you created the kind of body you want, or you've created and launched your business, or something succeeding in your life. The longer the gap until you start the activities relating to another goal, the longer that gap, the more dangerous it is. So yes, take a moment to celebrate, to develop those reward mechanisms for conditioning yourself, anchoring yourself for success by celebrating every time you achieve something. Yes, achieve, succeed, reward, but then move on to your next challenge quite quickly. Otherwise, that gap can insidiously create opportunities for you to fall into the abyss of depression. So have another goal ready before you finish the achievement of an existing one. And lastly, feel part of a group. Feel part of a community. Even if it's an online community that's supportive, a Facebook group, there are so many groups out there relating to health, exercise. Go and join a mastermind. Go and join a group. Come join my mastermind, the Power Mastermind. You can get it at my website. Remember, www.alexgem.com. We have a community of, maximum 20 people we take, and we get together sometimes several times a year. You get together to bounce ideas off another, to teach one another new things, to keep each other accountable, to keep each other on track, to build that momentum, that positivity, to build that consistency, to create the kind of love and abundance where we feel supported. It's extraordinary how powerful these masterminds can be. So come and join me at mine. That'd be a privilege for me. Start to take hold of your life. Feel part of a culture. Feel part of a community. And make sure you're joining a community that have unconditional love. Familial members. Make sure you feel trusted. Make sure you feel like you're around people who aren't monitoring what you do for them necessarily. You don't want to be part of a transaction. That's not love. That's not a marriage. That's not a team where you go, oh, you do this for me and I do that for you. No. You do it out of pure love. Now, obviously, don't be taken for granted and taken advantage of. But unconditional love is when people are there for you when you need them. All right, and you can test people to see how much they actually love you. You can even fake needing someone's support and seeing if they'll turn up to a certain event or a certain place, or see if they'll turn up to to come out for dinner with you. Tell them, listen, I need your advice on something. Can you come help me? I really could do with someone to talk to. Just test them and see how they react. Sometimes some people are genuinely busy, but if they've done it a couple of times in close proximity and they don't look to set up a date in the foreseeable future to come meet with you to help you out with your problem, then they're more likely not a real friend. So, start to find out and weed out the weak ones in your life and build a community of like-minded, supportive, loving people. And that's how you avoid depression. That's how you stay positive. That's how you feel supported. Because when the fundamentals are in place, that's when you feel like you can move on to the next level. Think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When you feel safe, when you feel supported, when you feel loved, when you feel connected, that's when you feel like you can go on and challenge your skills and to go on and get promotions after promotions, or go and launch that business because you've got those support mechanisms in place. You're coming from a source of abundance, of love, of support. And so if you appreciate this kind of material, guys, go and get my book, The Art of Power, Happiness and Success. You can get it at Amazon. You can get it at my store. My store can be found at www.alexgemstore.com. Go get my book. You can get my free ebook at my website at www.alexgem.com. Get the 10 steps to excellence. I guarantee that if you start to embed those 10 steps to excellence, you will be happier than ever before. You will make so much more progress in your life in terms of how happy you feel, how much energy you have, how much wealth you create in your life. You'll be more loving in your relationships. You will avoid depression. So go take control of your life, guys. Like I said, you might want to get my course. Just go to my website, click where it says join PHS today. Get my course. You can get it immediately. Join me at the Power Mastermind. and really take hold of your life. Create that community. You'll need to take action if you want to improve in your life, guys. Otherwise, inaction leads to sadness, inertia. Inaction leads to hopelessness, depression. And I'd rather you had strong emotion, even if it was frustration or anger, because at least that leads to actions. Hopefully it doesn't hurt anyone. But at least it's a strong emotion that catapults you to take action. So, I'm here. If you want to work one-on-one, I would love to be your mentor. That would be an extraordinary privilege of mine to help you to take the quality of your life to another level. You can begin that process at my website as well. Just click where it says coaching. Go and see which package suits you best. And I just can't wait to work with you in the future, guys. I hope you appreciated this episode. I hope you learned something really insightful. And your future is yours, guys. Take hold of it. You are in control. You are in charge. And I'll see you soon. Look after yourselves, guys. Much love. Bye-bye.